All right, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're actually unpacking a pretty incredible scientific detective story. We're looking at a groundbreaking piece of research that asks a remarkably simple yet totally profound question. Could a normal, everyday dietary element actually fight off a deadly disease? Specifically, we're going to explore how a single compound found in standard soy products might just be the key to stopping prostate cancer in its tracks. We're talking a wild journey from broad global health trends straight down to the microscopic cellular level. Let's get into it.
To really grasp why this research is just so absolutely crucial, we have to start with the stakes. And the big number here is 30%. Up to 30% of patients who go through surgery for prostate cancer will unfortunately experience a relapse. And what makes this relapse particularly terrifying is that prostate cancer has this really strong tendency to metastasize or spread directly into the bone. Once it reaches the bone, it causes severe pain, fractures, and honestly, it becomes incredibly difficult to treat. It's a devastating progression, and scientists are just desperate to find a way to halt it.
But this really grim reality actually led researchers to a super compelling question. They asked, wait, why do some populations around the world have drastically lower rates of this exact cancer and its deadly metastases? When you look at the epidemiological studies, there's a stark contrast between Western populations and Asian men. Asian men who traditionally eat diets much higher in soy products have a remarkably lower incidence and mortality rate when it comes to prostate cancer. That observation right there was the spark. Scientists wanted to know, is there something specific in that diet acting as a sort of biological shield?
And that brings us to the hero of our investigation today, genistein. So what exactly is genistein? It's a prominent isoflavonoid, which is essentially just a naturally occurring plant compound. You'll find it abundantly in everyday soy products. Think tofu, edamame, and soy milk. Now, previous studies had already hinted that genistein could inhibit cancer cell growth if you put it in a petri dish, but researchers needed to know something much bigger. Could it actually stop prostate cancer from invading human bone inside a living, breathing system?
Okay, so to figure this out, scientists use this incredibly advanced setup known as the SID-H mouse model. Let's break down exactly how they built this living laboratory step by step. First, they implanted actual human bone fragments into mice that were specifically engineered to have basically no immune system, so they wouldn't reject the human tissue. Step 2, they injected highly aggressive human prostate cancer cells directly into that bone fragment. Step 3, they fed a specific group of these mice a diet containing genistein. And finally, Step 4, they meticulously measured the tumor growth over several weeks. It's a pretty ingenious way to recreate human bone metastasis.
Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, were they just feeding these mice completely unrealistic megadoses of soy just to force a result? Actually, no, not at all. The researchers checked the blood plasma levels of genistein in the mice, and it ranged from about 0.8 to 1.7 micromolar, which, yeah, sounds like a bunch of scientific jargon, but here's the really amazing part. Those exact concentrations perfectly match the natural blood levels you'd find in a human being eating a traditional soy-rich diet. So this wasn't some artificial chemical flood. It was a highly realistic simulation of a standard diet.
And the physical proof they got back? Just undeniable. When examining the X-rays of the implanted bones from the control group, the ones that didn't get any genistein, you can clearly see massive, cloudy areas. That is severe bone destruction or osteolysis being caused right there by the expanding cancer tumor. But then you look at the bone from the group fed the genistein diet. The bone architecture is largely intact, and the tumor growth is drastically reduced. The genistein diet was literally actively protecting the bone structure.
Seeing that physical X-ray evidence is absolutely amazing, but it immediately begs the next big question. How? How exactly does a compound from a simple little soybean physically stop aggressive cancer cells from destroying solid human bone? To find out, the researchers had to zoom way in. They had to pivot from looking at the physical structure of the bone all the way down to the microscopic molecular machinery operating inside the cancer cells themselves.
To do this, they used a piece of tech called microarray analysis to look at gene expression. I want you to think of gene expression kind of like a cellular master control board. Every cell has thousands of genes, and they act a bit like the sliders on a sound engineer's mixing console. Some sliders control cell growth, others control destruction. Well, what the researchers discovered was that genistein wasn't just blindly floating around in there. It was acting like a master sound engineer, literally turning the volume up on certain specific genes and turning the volume way down on others.
Let's look at exactly which sliders genistein was manipulating on that master control board. First, what did it turn down?
It actively suppressed the expression of MMPs and tumor growth genes. Essentially, it was silencing the molecular threats. On the flip side, what did it turn up? It massively boosted the expression of genes responsible for apoptosis and OPG. Basically, it was cranking up the volume on the body's natural cellular defenses. Let's break down exactly what these specific genes actually do, starting with those threats.
The primary genes that Genistein turned down are known as matrix metalloproteinases, or let's just call them MMPs for short. You can really think of MMPs as molecular bulldozers. You see, in order for a cancer tumor to grow and spread inside a bone, it has to physically clear a path by breaking down the dense extracellular matrix of the bone itself. The cancer cells literally produce these MMP enzymes to bulldoze that bone tissue out of the way. But by downregulating these exact genes, Genistein effectively unplugs the bulldozers. It totally halts the cancer's ability to clear space and expand.
And the hard data backs up this bulldozer theory perfectly. The researchers used real-time RT-PCR, which is a highly precise way to measure gene activity, to look at a very specific, very dangerous bulldozer called MMP9. In the untreated control group, the charts show a massive expression of this destructive enzyme. But in the Genistein-treated groups, there is a dramatic, statistically significant drop in MMP9 expression. The biological command to produce the bulldozer was literally canceled out by the soy compound. It's wild.
But wait, Genistein doesn't just stop the cancer from bulldozing. Remember those defensive sliders we said it turned up? Well, one of the major pathways it activates is called apoptosis. Apoptosis is, in simple terms, programmed cell death. It's a natural self-destruct sequence that's built into our cells for when they become damaged. Cancer cells are notorious for turning this self-destruct sequence off so they can just keep growing forever. Genistein basically steps in, flips the switch back on, and tells the prostate cancer cells, hey, it is time to trigger your own self-destruction.
The other major defense mechanism Genistein turns up is a protein called osteoprotogerin, or OPG. If MMPs are the bulldozers, OPG is basically the biological shield. Normally, cancer cells trick the bone into breaking itself down by stimulating these bone-eating cells called osteoclasts. But OPG acts as a decoy receptor. It actively blocks the signals that create those bone-eating cells in the first place. By upregulating OPG, Genistein throws a powerful protective shield over the bone matrix, keeping it strong and intact against the cancer's chemical attacks.
Okay, so we've seen the X-rays, we've decoded the genes, but here is the ultimate visual proof tying it all together right inside the tissue. When looking at the untreated tumor under a microscope using special immunostaining, the bright red coloring reveals a ton of the dangerous MMP9 bulldozer protein present. It's everywhere. But then, you look at the Genistein-treated tumor next to it, and that dangerous red protein is almost completely gone. The physical protein that actively causes bone destruction has been virtually wiped out at the cellular level. So, what is the big takeaway from all this dense molecular science? Well, the researchers definitively prove that dietary genistein completely disrupts the vicious cycle of bone destruction. It doesn't just treat the symptoms, right? It inhibits overall tumor growth by going directly into the cell's control board and actively regulating the critical genes responsible for metastasis. It unplugs the bulldozers, and it arms the shields. This clearly demonstrates that genistein holds incredible promise as a non-toxic, preventative agent against one of the deadliest aspects of prostate cancer.
Which leaves us with a truly profound thought to end on today. If a single compound found naturally in a soybean can literally rewrite the genetic commands of a deadly cancer cell and protect our bones from destruction, could the food on our plates be our most powerful first line of defense? It fundamentally bridges the gap between everyday nutrition and advanced disease prevention. It's a pretty great reminder that sometimes the most sophisticated molecular medicine might just be growing right out of the ground. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.